Space Shuttle program. Randy and I grew up in Huntsville, Alabama, where a lot of this was happening, and our brother is a rocket scientist down there now, and our dad was an inventor also. But I'm gonna read this to you. What launches like a rocket and lands like a plane is the Space Shuttle, of course. It is the most complicated spaceship ever built, with more than 2.5 million parts and weighing over 4.5 million pounds at launch. It can carry up to 7 astronauts and 35,000 pounds of cargo, and was designed to be flown again and again. In more than 100 missions, the crews of the spaceships Challenger, Columbia, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour have achieved amazing things. They have delivered and repaired communications and weather satellites, and transported large sections of the International Space Station. And don't forget the famous Hubble Space Telescope. The shuttle was the only space vehicle large enough to deliver it to space. And when Hubble needed repair, a shuttle crew was sent to fix it. With satellites beaming down images from Hubble, you can view amazing pictures of the universe on your computer screen with just a few clicks. The fleet of shuttles was scheduled to be retired in 2010 after delivering the final sections of the International Space Station. The first launch was Columbia, and that was in 1981, and then the final landing was Atlantis, and that was in 2011. And of course, we remember the 2 shuttle missions that had tragic accidents. That was the Challenger in 1986 and Columbia in 2003. So I asked my brother, Tim, I said, why did they retire the Space Shuttle program? He said it was incredibly expensive, and it was an expensive way to just drop off cargo for the International Space Station. And so now I introduce my brother Randy's gonna come up and talk about what things that he brought here in the program.
Wow, I'm gonna need to get up there. General, appreciate your service. I graduated from high school in '74 Northside, and my dad was in the Navy on the USS St. Paul during the Korean War. And I had plans to go in the Navy, and he said, Randy, you're wasting your time, you got flat feet. And I still got flat feet, to go in, but anyway, I appreciate it. Well, I'd love to sit down and talk to you. I got a lot of questions I'd like to ask you. But it's good to be here today with you, and I'll make it short and brief. I'm not gonna get too technical, okay? Is that okay, ladies? Yes. Of course, Sharon was talking about it, and this is the Space Shuttle, okay? And I wrote down some things here, which I had already known this, but when you get my age, you have a tendency to forget things. Y'all are not there yet, but these are the solid rocket boosters, okay? Of course, this is the shuttle itself, and like Sharon said, it would carry up to 7 passengers. And this is the fuel tank that feeds these rocket engines. There's 3 mounted down here on the shuttle. The solid rocket boosters weighed 1,300,000 pounds apiece. Now that's a massive weight, okay? Thrust, okay? When you talk about thrust, it's talking about the power that's coming out of these engines here. It's 3,300,000 pounds of thrust, which would be equal to, you just try to visualize this, if you lined up on a train track, 6 locomotive engines, you know, in a train, just the engine itself, and you were trying to push something down the track, it would be equal to 6 locomotives that's picking up all of this to carry it into orbit. On the launch pad, before the shuttle would go up, you know what the weight of all this is together when it's fully loaded? It's 4.5 million pounds is what you saw go up. 4.5 million pounds at launch, okay? So I'll give you, everybody get those details? All right. When the shuttle would, of course, go off the pad, if I can get this one off the pad, it would go up and it would make a turn, and it would go up like this, okay? And after 2 minutes, these 2 rockets here would separate, and they would parachute down. And here I brought a picture of it. It kind of shows you what it looks like as they are separating, okay? And so these rockets here, the solid rockets on the side, they fall back and they parachute, okay? This tank here, it burns up in the atmosphere. It doesn't, of course, it's still got some fuel in it, so it really makes a good fire, okay? Of course, the shuttle is, after separated, it goes into orbit. I brought some things here that are related to the shuttle. Now, this big boat here is 40 pounds. Now, I would pass around, but I don't think you want to handle 40 pounds. I'm fixing to sit down myself. But this boat here actually is what bolted the shuttle to the launch pad. They had 4 of them on each side. There was a total of 8. 2 on this side, 2 on that side, 2 on this side, 2 on this side. Okay? This is what bolted the shuttle down to the launch pad. And what is amazing, and I shared this with my sister, and I want to share it with you today. Space flight is a dangerous thing. It's very, these guys, you know, somebody said they're astronauts. Well, they may be, but you don't, you know, just like our military guys in courage in war and defending our freedom, these guys who ride these rockets are just a different breed of people, they really are. And I say all that to say this, at the moment that these solid rockets open up, these 2 right here, they cannot be shut off. You know, like a switch, like they can't turn the power off because they're solid rockets. And so once they ignite them, they've got to go, okay? What happens the moment that these fire, they fire these off, there are some explosives, small explosives in these 40-pound boats, okay, that have to go off, and what it does, it separates these boats. It just splits them in half. Now, if when those solid rockets, when they fire up, if just one of those boats would fail to explode, you know what would happen? It couldn't leave the pad. Well, you know what would happen there with those rockets sitting there? It's just like a car being changed and it's running wide open. Something, the engine or something's going to blow. Well, that's how close actually on the pad that these astronauts were to an explosion, because if these boats, if just one of them failed, oh my goodness, you're talking about a major fire, explosion. And so I talked to one of the astronauts I had the privilege of meeting down in Huntsville. As a matter of fact, he had just went up on one of the previous shuttle flights that year. And he told me, he said, Randy, he said, when you are sitting on this, I never will forget what he said. He said, when you're up there strapped in a rocket and you're actually sitting strapped to a gasoline can, which is what this is right here, he said, you better know your maker. Because he said, you may either end up going to heaven or going to hell, because you're, you know, when that thing explodes, erupts, and I never have forgot him for that. And it kind of let me show the appreciation of him that much more. Well, to move on quickly, when these solid rockets, when they separate from the main tank, they come down, they parachute. They have parachutes that open. As a matter of fact, they go out and they retrieve these rockets here and refurbish them and reuse them again. That saves a lot of money. And so the parachute system was located right in the top of where these nose cones here, okay? This nose cone would come off, the parachute would come out. And so in the parachutes, you know, everybody knows what a parachute is, with the strings, your cords, parachute cords. Well, each parachute cord had one of these spools. I call it, like my sister sews with, a sewing spool. Well, these cords were in here, and there were explosives in here that exploded that parachute out. And so this thing being as heavy, it would come out of the SRB, and it would be a part of opening up those strings that opened up that parachute. So this one here has actually been used. Now this has not, because it's still put together. Now I do have something that has actually been into space. This has actually been on the space shuttle itself. This went up on STS-3, the third solid rocket, the third shuttle that went up in space. Well, you say, well, what is it? Well, it is a carrying case. They could have put, you know, luggage, they could put clothing, some of their attire, whatever they did, their food. I don't know what they had in this one, but they were strapped to the side of the shuttle inside, and you can see what it is. And so, yeah, but this is one of my masterpieces that I got that has actually been in the space. I've got some other things that I have in my rocket room at the house that has actually been in space too, but this is one of my favorite here, and because I can show you, you can say, wow, it's really been in space, okay? It went up on the 3rd shuttle flight. And so that's about all that I have. Anybody got any non-technical questions, you can ask me. I know you can really get technical, but I have over the years, of course, like Sharon said, me and her grew up in Huntsville. Our dad was a NASA engineer. Our youngest brother, Tim, is. And at one time, I worked for Facet Aerospace Company, and we actually made the filters that went in the side of the shuttle, you know, like your air conditioner filters. Well, it, you know, gave them, it would carry all the bad air out and put the new air in. But of course, I don't have one of those. I wish I could have gotten one, but they were all signatures. None of them were supposed to leave the building, you know, so you couldn't get even one that was manufactured bad that we messed up on. They wouldn't even let us have one of those. So, but anyway, that was my contribution to the shuttle program. But I have a whole lot of stuff in my rocket room, and sometimes I just sit in there and look at all my stuff. And I've always kidded my wife. I say, honey, if something happens to me, you and your next husband, you don't let that stuff go cheap. It's worth the money. She said, oh, I've kept you for too long now. She's got this big video. She'll hear this. But anyway, okay, well, that's part of my presentation. And so I'm going to box my stuff up here and quietly, as they used to say, Elvis has left the building. Well, Randy has left the building.